Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast, number one for sport in West Cork.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healey, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport Podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. On this week's show we'll be looking ahead to the Cork Senior Football Championship semi-final between Newcestown and Duhallow this weekend, and speaking to Newcestown manager Tom Wilson.
We'll also reflect on a second consecutive county final loss for the West Cork ladies, who once again came up short against Mourneabbey at CIT last Saturday.
But we'll start with the news that Cork will kick off their 2020 Championship campaign against Kerry in the Munster semi-final in what will be a repeat of last year's Munster final. And Kieran, I know it's only October and I don't know why these draws are made so early in the morning on Morning Ireland, but that's a conversation for another day. But despite the fact that it is only October, Ronan McCarthy and his newly appointed background team will already be plotting how they're going to take down Peter Keane's beaten All-Ireland finalists.
It's a big ask, even though Cork did make progress this year, Jack, Kerry certainly made progress after the Munster final against Cork. This Munster semi-final next year will be played in Páirc Uí Chaoimh again, which is something that's an advantage for Cork, because I don't know how long it is since Cork won down in Killarney. It hasn't been a happy hunting ground for Cork teams travelling across the county bounds. I think the 2020 Munster Championship will take on extra significance depending on what happens at the special Congress that's going to be on in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Saturday week, October 19th. You know, all those proposals about this new Tier 2 Championship coming in. It depends what proposal is backed, really, because as it stands, with Cork demoted down to Division 3, if it is the top 16 teams that go through to the All-Ireland series, if it's taken as the teams that start the league, Cork aren't in the top 16 teams, and if Cork don't get through to the Munster final, then they will be in Tier 2. I know I sound a little bit like Kevin Kilvan trying to explain the Nations League here, but it's so basically it's the top 16 teams that will start Division 1, Division 2 next year will be in prime position to go into the All-Ireland, the race for Sam Maguire. But Tipperary are proposing that it's the 16 teams, the top 16 teams after the league. So that means the two teams that win Division 3 will be in the top 16 teams. So that
just to make it that little bit more confusing.
Yeah, and the bottom two teams will drop down. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the Special Congress, if Tipperary's motion does go through Cork, and if Cork can get promoted next year, it's a safety net there. But if the other motion goes through and it's the top 16 teams that start the league, so there's two sets of teams in Division 1 and Division 2 next year, that means Cork will have to beat Kerry, otherwise they're demoted down to the second tier, which will be headline grabbing when you consider that Cork were in the Super 8s this year. So we have to watch what happens at Special Congress in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Saturday week.
Okay, well, just then, before we move on, to put it into layman's terms, and we'll try and because
you might do a better job than I did.
You've confused me there, and I'm sitting beside you, so I can only imagine what's going through the minds of some of our listeners. So, just to really put it in black and white, as the current proposal stands, Cork would need to beat Kerry in a Munster semi-final.
They need to
guarantee themselves a place in Tier A.
It's the teams that get through to the provincial finals will be guaranteed.
Plus the top 16 teams in the league.
But if there's two different proposals out there,
but just take the second proposal out of it for a second. Proposal 1, Cork have to beat Kerry to be in Tier 1.
Exactly, yeah.
And then proposal 2, Cork could win Division 3 to be promoted into Tier 1.
Or finish in the top 2 in Division 3, and that's enough then.
Which, judging by how they finished last year, is likely. But how much of a disappointment would it be then? We're going to think in a worst case scenario for a second. For Cork to have had the year they've had this year, between the minors, the under-20s and the senior team making it to the Super 8s and holding their own in most of the games, to have to go and play in a B championship next year? That would it take the steam out of the progress Ronan McCarthy and his team have been making, or would it give them a chance to win some silverware and then kick on and go and win Sam the following year, 2021? What do you think?
I think they'll like in Division 3 next year, like they're obviously playing teams not of the quality of those in Division 1, Division 2. So if they have a full year outside of playing any kind of Division 1 teams, that's not good for the progression of this Cork team. They need to be in the All-Ireland series. They need to be in the hunt for Sam Maguire. They're not going to win it next year, but they really need to be playing those teams like they did this year. They played Dublin, Tyrone, Kerry, Roscommon, kind of all top level teams. That's where Cork need to be playing. So again, like I said, I've confused the hell out of it with my Terryman explanation of a very probably straightforward proposal, but we'll watch what happens. It'll be a lot clearer after Congress.
Well, nothing is in fact ever much clearer after Congress because they tend to confuse it even further. But look, we'll leave that there for now. And as mentioned at the top of the show, Newcestown are in Cork Senior Football Championship semi-final action this Saturday at Páirc Uí Rinn with throw-in set for 2 p.m. They'll play Duhallow. They'll play a Duhallow side that were beaten in last year's final and have looked like real contenders throughout the year so far. In a few minutes we're going to hear from Newcestown manager Tom Wilson. But Kieran, first of all, you might set the scene for us ahead of Saturday's game.
So this is Newcestown's first county senior football semi-final. They're on a great run this year. When you consider they lost their opener to Clonakilty back must have been April now. They bounced back really well since then. Good wins against Valley Rovers, Mallow, and then Island Rovers in the quarter-final. I suppose a feature of this run, Jack, is they haven't conceded a goal. They've come through some very, very tough, tight games. They beat Valley Rovers by 2 points. They beat Mallow by 1 point. So they're digging out results in hard games. They held Island Rovers scoreless in the second half of their quarter-final. They've got past the quarterfinals for the first time. They're back in the quarterfinals for the first time since 2011. So it's it doesn't charter territory for Newcestown football. Probably what helped this year is that they lost to Newtown in August in the county championship, because as a dual club and especially a dual senior club, and that's a badge that Newcestown rightly wear very proudly. It is hard to kind of be successful in both codes through both championships. It's only week in, week out, and you're swapping back and over from hurling to football. So the silver lining to losing the hurling means that they can concentrate fully on the football, and it's paying dividends. Tough game coming up on Sunday though. Duhallow would be favourites for this game. Duhallow beat Clon in the last round 2-15 to 12 points. They were beaten county finalists last year. Have a huge pick of clubs up in Duhallow, and Duhallow clubs are going well at the moment. So Newcestown have it all to do, Jack, but if it's a tight game, and if Newcestown make it a tight game, you wouldn't bet against them.
Well, you mentioned the fact that Duhallow beat Clonakilty in the last round, and that's kind of the only real form line we have to go on this season, because Duhallow comfortably beat Clonakilty in the last game. And as you mentioned earlier in the season, now obviously this is a long time ago at this stage, Clonakilty beat Newcestown in the first round, and that kind of gives us an idea of where both these teams are at. I guess Newcestown have obviously come a long way from there, as you mentioned, 3 hard fought victories. Just to give the listeners an idea of how the odds are shaping up ahead of Saturday's game. Beaten finalists last year, Duhallow, are 6-1 on for this one. Newcestown rank outsiders 9-2 with the draw at 12-1. So obviously the odds reflecting what you were saying there. And I think just an interesting point that I want to raise before I go back to you for your prediction as such. You mentioned Newcestown's solidity at the back. They've only conceded 2 goals. That was in their loss against Clonakilty earlier in the year. Similarly, Duhallow, very strong defensively. They conceded 2 goals against CIT in the divisional section of the championship, and haven't conceded a goal in the championship proper. Those came in games against Carrigaline and Clonakilty. But the interesting thing, the difference is Newcestown has scored 146 so far in this year's championship, conceded 241. So that's a score difference of +2. Duhallow have conceded 243, 2 points more than Newcestown, but they've scored 770, which is a 49 point differential. So that kind of tells you where the bookmakers are getting their odds from. So just then put into context how difficult a challenge this is going to be from Newcestown. You obviously mentioned they'd have more time to focus on the football this year, but they're coming up against an extremely strong Duhallow side that are probably chomping at the bit to get back to a final, having lost last year.
That's it, Duhallow are a really good football team. Like, even in midfield there, they have Aidan Walsh and Paul Walsh, and I think Aidan Walsh got a goal against Clan in the semi-final as well. Duhallow just a seasoned team at this stage. They're strong all over the field. It's a huge ask. It really is, to be honest, Jack, a huge ask for Newcestown to get past them. But you know what? Like you said there, with the odds, like, there's very little pressure on Newcestown apart from the pressure that they'll put on themselves. The expectation will be for a Duhallow win. So kind of, in a way, and I know it kind of sounds odd saying when it's a county semi-final, but Newcestown have absolutely nothing to lose here. Well, that's what I think anyway. They've absolutely nothing to lose because, like I said, everyone expects Duhallow to win. So you just never know, kind of. And I think one of the interesting things this year is that Newcestown have brought in 2 Cora boys into their kind of their management structure, and 2 very experienced Cora lads. In fairness, it's Colm O'Driscoll and Brian O'Driscoll, both former Cork senior footballers. And even talking to Tom Wilson, and we did an interview with Cora Keane there a couple of weeks ago, and Dennis Hurley was chatting to him. They've been kind of waxing lyrical about, I suppose, the very positive effect that Colm and Brian have had on this Newcestown team. I was going to read, Jack, actually a quote from Cork from a couple of weeks ago. He said, "They're seriously impressive, and they've given us a savage structure which we didn't have for the last few years. We have a senior attitude again, like when Martin O'Brien brought in. He left to go over the Cork Camogie team, and it was a massive loss, as he'd really raised standards." And Tom Wilson as well has praised the impact that Brian and Colm have made to the Newcestown camp. And I suppose it's they were thinking outside the box there, kind of to bring in the 2 lads, and it seems to have worked so far. Everyone is kind of very, very positive about the impact that Colm and Brian O'Driscoll have had on Cora. And you know what? It's probably fresh ideas, a new voice, and it's working out well. So could be a trick up their sleeve on Sunday. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see. And just to pick up on another point you made there about this being a kind of a nothing to lose game for Newcestown, and the fact that they're in uncharted territories. But just a quote I picked up on from Tom Wilson in the aftermath of their victory over Island Rovers. He was speaking to Dennis Hurley, and he just mentioned the fact that plenty on the current Newcestown panel were involved when they won the Premier Intermediate in 2010, and he made the point that they know what it takes. Mm-hmm. They know what it takes to win big games on the big day. We've seen that this season against Island Rovers as well, on a rotten day. Neither team, the conditions probably suited, but Newcestown managed to ground out a victory. They have players who've been there, done that in the business end of championships. So I guess I guess the point Tom Wilson was trying to make is we do have nothing to lose, but don't count us out. Like we've been here before at another level, admittedly, but still they've been at the business end of championships before. And I think Newcestown's best bet is to keep it a very tight game. Kind of. Tom Wilson alludes to that you don't want Duhallow to kind of build up a lead like Duhallow did in Clan. If Newcestown can keep it tight and make it a battle, they know how to win tight games. They did it against Mallow. They did it against Valley Rovers. That's when Ty Toomey got a goal, I think 52nd, 53rd minute when they were trailing. They went on to win. So if it's a tight battle, and if they can make it a battle and a fight, they could push Duhallow further than people think, but you'd still have to think Duhallow do hold all the aces here. But well, you mentioned the lead that Duhallow built up against Clonakilty. They were 8 points up at half time. Clinical is a word that was used to describe them. It was 1-8 to 3 points at half time. They scored 1-6 without reply in the first half, and that totally killed the game off. So Newcestown would have to be very wary of allowing that to happen again. But I think when we hear from Newcestown manager Tom Wilson now, who spoke to Kieran ahead of Saturday's huge Cork Senior Football Championship semi-final against Duhallow.
I suppose in one way, is it uncharted territory for Newcestown, like being in a county senior football semi-final? It's your first time, so do you see it as bonus territory getting this far for the first time, or the fact that you're here now, do you really want to drive on and make the most of it?
Oh, in our club we always try to drive on and make the most of everything, Mm-hmm. Our ambition would always be to get as far as possible in any competition that we're in. I suppose we are in bonus territory. The ambition would have been to keep our status in Premier Senior for next year or whatever. We had to beat both Valley Rovers and Mallow to get that. But then when we got that far, we said we might as well, what else have we to do? We might as well drive on and go as far as we can.
What's different this year to previous years? Because I think even getting to the quarterfinals this year was the first time Newcestown have achieved that since 2011. And after a couple of very good results there, like you said, beat Clan early on, got the better Valleys, good win against Mallow, then beat Island. Is there something different in the camp this year, Tom?
Well, I'd put it this way. In 2014, we got to Premier Intermediate Hurling Final. In 2015, we won it. The last 2 years, we've got to the quarter-final of the senior hurling. So, it's down to that. We're the same team, basically. So, it's a matter of, I suppose, when we're out of one, the other can drive on more. That's just the nature of our club.
And I suppose, like you kind of mentioned there, you're in a very unique position, like Newcestown being a senior hurling and football club. So, kind of the silver lining to be knocked out of the hurling is it probably has allowed you to concentrate a lot more on the football, and you're reaping the kind of benefits of that now.
Absolutely. Well, we've had 8 weeks now, basically, of doing football. We haven't had that, I'd say, since probably 2011. That, as I said, it's just the nature of our club. It's the way we do things. We drive on as far as we can in both codes, and if one is beaten, and the other one gets a chance to recover, because we did get 3 weeks between when we lost the hurling and the Valley Rovers game. That was very important.
What's been the most pleasing, I suppose, performance and results so far? You haven't conceded a goal yet, I don't think, in the championship either. But what stands out for you so far in this run, Tom?
Well, like you say, we haven't conceded a goal yet. We've been defensively very strong. But then we have won 2 very tight games in the first 2. We happened to get a goal against Valley Rovers, which was the winning of the game. Whoever was going to get a goal first, I felt, was always going to win it. And we finished up only beating Mallow by a point as well, 15-14. And, the fact that we had a shutout against Island Rovers in the second half of last year was a huge plus, and it's given us a bit of confidence now going forward that, that we are defensively capable of doing quite well.
And the fact, like you alluded to there, like Newcestown have won a couple of games by a point or two. Like when it comes down to the crunch in a game, like how to dig in and hold on to lead. That's a very good characteristic to have in any team.
It certainly is. I suppose the biggest challenge now is getting ahead in the first place. Yeah. That we know we're up against like a hugely excellent Duhallow team, who blew Kilty away in the first quarter now the last day. So we have to come over with our guns blazing ourselves to be able to try to match them in what they're going to do.
Like you kind of said there, like the Duhallow are obviously kind of county finalists last year. They've been thereabouts for the last couple of years. So looking ahead to the semi-final this weekend, Tom, I suppose keeping it tight in that opening quarter is very, very important. You don't want Duhallow to do to Clan. You don't want Duhallow to do to Eve what they did to Clan. I suppose you want to keep it tight and really make it a battle for them.
Absolutely, certainly. You look at all the talent they have, and their clubs are going very well at the moment as well. Along with the likes of Drumtalloch, Knocknagree, Clonturk are all flying in their respective championships. So we have to respect all that, and we have to keep it very tight at the back. We're going to have to kind of try to build up a score on the other end ourselves as well.
And I also see this year what's new to the setup that the 2 O'Driscoll brothers from Cork, Colm and Brian, have been, I suppose, drafted in to help out. What sort of a effect have they had on the setup, Tom?
Well, I suppose they brought a new direction. Mm-hmm. They have been both senior inter-county players themselves. They have experience of coaching at that higher level, and they have brought that note to bear with us, and our direction and what we are doing has improved immensely under them.
And I suppose they're bringing, like you said, they're kind of fresh ideas, fresh voices, and so on. And sometimes that really does kind of give you that extra couple of percent. And the two lads, like you said, they've played at the highest level. So they really do know what they're talking about as well.
Absolutely, and the result, the fact we got results in the first couple of games, I think has really built the belief within the lads that in what Colm and Brian are bringing to each training session and that kind of thing as well,
Brilliant. No, fingers crossed for this weekend. Hopefully it's another great day for Newcestown, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to all things sport in West Cork. Don't forget to pick up this Thursday's Southern Star newspaper, including our award-winning sports section with everything a West Cork sports fan could want. In shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world via www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper. The Southern Star and the Star Sport Podcast, number 1 for sport in West Cork.
The West Cork ladies came up short once again on Saturday as they were beaten by 6 in a row chasing Mourneabbey on a scoreline of 4-9 to 1-9 in the senior ladies county final at CIT. This was the second year in a row the West Cork ladies have been beaten by Mourneabbey at this stage, and this one will have hurt just as much, if not more. Kieran, you were at the game at CIT. What did you make of it?
The better team won straight off. The better team won. Mourneabbey were distinctly the better team on Saturday evening. Mourneabbey raced into a big lead. They got 4 goals in the first 23 minutes. And to be honest, I was kind of fearing the worst at that stage because Mourneabbey were just ripping right through West Cork, and it didn't look good for West Cork. In fairness, the divisional side, West Cork, they dug in, and the second half performance was a lot better than the first half, but the horse had bolted by then. West Cork will have regrets. They really will, Jack, especially that first half performance, especially against a team like Mourneabbey. They're All-Ireland champions, they're Munster champions. They were going for 6 in a row. You cannot let a team like Mourneabbey score a goal after less than 2 minutes.
Off the throw-in practically.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. It was an absolute killer. And Mourneabbey just found holes in the West Cork defence. They braked it at speed, and they really did rip the West Cork defence right open. Darren O'Sullivan again was outstanding. Like, what a player she is. Noelle Healey, we kind of mentioned her last week. She's the Dublin import with Mourneabbey. Class act again, she got her second goal. It was a beautiful finish, a bullet of a drive coming in off an angle. They were just too good for West Cork, which is probably just cutting it down to kind of the simplest terms. Like I said, West Cork did play a lot better in the second half, but by then at half time I think it was 4-2 to 3 points. 4-2
to 6.
4-2 to 6 points, sorry. But what happened then at the start of the second half is that Mourneabbey got the first 4 points in a row, and like whatever hope West Cork had of staging some sort of a comeback, they needed to kind of race out of the blocks quick, but they didn't. They were slow again.
Because you would have thought at half time, going in 4-2 to 6 points down, admittedly they'd conceded 4 goals, so heads possibly would have been down, but they were still within touching distance realistically, and to concede those 4 early points was a real killer blow.
It did, yeah, because all of a sudden there was 12 points between the teams, and West Cork did have a lot more of the ball after that, and they had a lot of chances again, but they missed an awful lot. And I think we touched on it a small bit last week when we were talking about West Cork, saying that they kind of had to be more clinical with the chances they created, but they weren't. They had some bad wides from open play. But then I suppose credit too to the Mourneabbey goalkeeper and the Mourneabbey defence. Like, there were some serious blocks going on back there. I can remember Anya Terry O'Sullivan had a shot, Niamh Cotter had a shot, I think it was Derek Heiley had an effort. There was a couple of more chances in between, but Mourneabbey just repelled everything that was thrown at them. And when West Cork did get through for a goal they needed, I think it was around 12 minutes left, Melissa Duggan, who I have to say was outstanding again. She is some player. She's nominated for a GA All-Star this year, and I really hope she gets it because she was superb again against Mourneabbey the last day. She just doesn't know when to stop. She's a brilliant, carries the ball so well, and it was no surprise that she was pulled down for the penalty. And after that, Ciara O'Sullivan was yellow carded, so Mourneabbey were down to 14 players. Anya Terry stuck away the penalty. So all of a sudden, the gap had been kind of reduced to 7 points, and we kind of 10-11 minutes left. So you're thinking, okay, if West Cork can get the next score, maybe they might start putting seeds of doubt in Mourneabbey's mind. But Mourneabbey went up the other end, and Doireann O'Sullivan got 2 points. The first one from play was beauty, and then she got a free as well. And it just kind of struck with me. I said, Mourneabbey is such an experienced team. When West Cork had a bit of momentum, they went up to the end, got on a couple of points, and it just stopped West Cork on their tracks again, and then the game just petered out.
I unfortunately wasn't able to attend the game, but I was following closely online and on the radio. And you mentioned in your match report as well, and you also mentioned earlier the 4 goals in the first 23 minutes that Mourneabbey managed to score. Sarah Hayes went off injured for the West Cork ladies early on. She's their full back. So how much of a difference maker was that? Because to lose a player out of your full back line so early can only cause chaos, really. And I guess Mourneabbey were only too happy to take advantage of the confusion.
Yeah, Sarah Hayes has probably been one of West Cork's best players this year. She was captain of the Cork Under-21 team that won the Munster Championship from Rosscarbery. She's what she's too, Jack. Not only is she a good footballer, but she's a physical presence. I suppose West Cork, a few of the players you could say are slight. Kind of what struck me the last day at Mourneabbey is that they're a very big, athletic, strong team. West Cork don't have that same build. Sarah Hayes is a strong player, and what actually happened there, she had a collision with Doireann O'Sullivan. They both went for the ball, and they were both down injured, and they broke it up and they played on. Doireann was fine after, but you could see that Sarah wasn't herself, and it turns out that she had a shoulder injury, and I think she went off to CUH after just to get it checked out. So that was a big blow, because West Cork then they brought on Christine O'Sullivan, and she would bring back, and I think Cleena Maguire went back into the full back line. So they made a couple of switches, but it would have upset them. Yeah. I don't think it was enough to kind of pin it all on Sarah's injury on the result.
But it's a factor.
Yeah, it was a factor. But even I think if Sarah Hayes did last the full game, just Mourneabbey were, especially that first half, too fast, too quick, too slick, too clinical, too good for West Cork. But it's a game where West Cork, like I said, they will have regrets, and they know that they can play, and they can play a lot better than they did. And that's something that they kind of have to use for next year, because it can be very tough for divisional teams, because you're pulling from so many different clubs, and the clubs are in county championship action themselves. I really do hope that West Cork's kind of stick at it, and they go again next year. Because to be honest, they're the only side in Cork that can actually give Mourneabbey a game. I think we talked very early in the year that a number of senior clubs in Cork were looking to oust West Cork from the county championship. They thought that they shouldn't be in there. But if West Cork were not in the county championship, I'm not joking, Mourneabbey would win year after year after year. They're that good, Mourneabbey. So at least with West Cork there, it makes it some bit competitive, and it gives Mourneabbey gives them a good game heading into Munster. And West Cork will get better, I think. They have a lot of young players there.
There is a championship in this team.
Oh, they're 100%. When you're looking at the team, Emer Dara Healey are very young, kind of Claire O'Shea, Laura O'Mahony, even the likes of Niamh Cotter, Emma Spillane, Melissa Duggan, Anya Terry, they're still young. Even Martine O'Brien is quite young as well in relative terms, so they have the core of a very, very good team, but they need to stick together. And I suppose what's happened over the last couple of years too is the first year West Cork started off, they had the Kinsale players, and they didn't have Clonakilty and Beara players. Then the next year they lost the Bantry players, because Bantry went senior, but they got in Clonakilty and Beara players. The year after that, West Cork couldn't pick Kinsale players because they were gone senior. But this year they could pick Bantry players for the first time in 2 years because Bantry had regraded. So again, it sounds a bit confusing, but it just shows the kind of the difficulty for a divisional team. You don't have the same pick year after year after year. Like the Bantry Blues came in this year, and you had Emma Spillane, Eve Murphy, Rachel Murphy, they all played the last day. So if you have a more settled team going forward, which is obviously it's very, very hard for a divisional team, they're definitely in with a show, because you have 10 Cork seniors on that West Cork team. So I think it's worth noting too that Mourneabbey won the All-Ireland last year, Jack, and they'd lost 3 out of the previous 4 finals. I think some stat like that. So it took Mourneabbey a while. They were knocking on that door for a while before it opened. Now West Cork have lost 2 county finals, but they just have to keep knocking at the door because their time will come, and they need to be ready to take their chance when it does.
And just before we move on, what I have heard since Saturday's game even, that in the West Cork ladies dressing room there was devastation on the faces of the players. They were down, and that's, I know you don't want to celebrate the fact that people were upset, but it's a good sign that they really, really desperately wanted to win for themselves, but also under the visual guise of the West Cork ladies, which sometimes you don't see in visual sides. It's a box ticking exercise, but these players, they desperately want to win a senior county final. They desperately want to win it with this divisional side, so that's promising. They will be back, and hopefully we'll see them in a final again next year. Before we take a break though, I just want to touch on Mourneabbey briefly. This is their 6th in a row. Over the weekend in Mayo, Carnacon, led by Cork Staunton, landed their 21st senior county final in a row. So I know we said there's a county championship in this West Cork ladies side, but is there a danger with the likes of Noel Healey coming down from Dublin that this Mourneabbey side could just continue, and could we be talking here in 4 years' time about the 10 in a row winning Mourneabbey ladies?
You could, honestly, you could. Mourneabbey are that good. Still not quite as dominant as the Ballymacarbery in Waterford, I think. I know what they won, was it their 28 or 38 there a couple of weeks ago, but Mourneabbey are the dominant force in Cork ladies club football right now. It'll take a very, very good team to beat them, because they're All-Ireland champions. Like, kind of, it's just almost unfortunate for West Cork, because they're kind of building and getting better all the time, that for them to take the next step, that they have to beat the best team in the country, you know. And Mourneabbey are that. You could see the last day kind of they've just strength all over the field, and then in that attack, when you've Ciara O'Sullivan, Ellie Jack, Darren O'Sullivan, Noel Healey, like it is inter-county standard, you know. Kind of, I would think Mourneabbey would beat a lot of inter-county teams, to be quite honest with you. So they'll take a lot of stopping going into the Munster series, and then probably hopefully the All-Ireland series as well. Shane Ronayne has done a terrific job with them, but they're the standard setters. That's what West Cork have to reach to beat them. You know what, kind of, they're not too far off it. So like I said, keep knocking on that door and it will open. So
okay, lovely stuff. Well, we leave that there for now, and coming up after the break, we're going to have a look at what's to come in this week's Southern Star Sports section.
Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to all things sport in West Cork. Don't forget to pick up this Thursday's Southern Star newspaper, including our award-winning sports section with everything a West Cork sports fan could want. In shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world via www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper. The Southern Star and the Star Sport Podcast, #1 for sport in West Cork.
Welcome back to the Star Sport Podcast, and before we wrap up today's show, we're going to quickly look at what's coming up in this week's paper. And Kieran, I assume the Bantry Blues versus Éire Óg in the Premier Intermediate Football Championship semi-final is going to take centre stage.
Yeah, that's a big game for Bantry on Saturday in Clonakilty at 4 p.m. Brilliant to see Bantry at this stage of the competition, Jack. They haven't reached it in I don't know when the last time they got past the quarterfinals. The quarterfinals was their ceiling the last couple of years, but they beat Bandon recently after a replay, which was a very important result for them, because in the drawn game, Bantry were 5 points up inside the last quarter, but Bandon came back to draw that game and force the replay, and there was almost this feeling, oh Jesus, was that Bantry's chance gone? But in fairness, no, they came back and they beat Bandon in the replay. Kind of like with Newcestown and Duhallow, kind of, I suppose Bantry Blues will go in as underdogs against Éire Óg. Éire Óg now would be one of the favourites to win the Premier Intermediate. Any team that is Kieran Sheehan listed as a sub, like they did in the last game, they didn't need to bring him on. There's some strength and depth, Éire Óg. They've inter-county players all over the pitch. Even like Daniel Goulding, a former Cork footballer up top, is still scoring heavy. So kind of Bantry have it all to do. I had a chat with Peter Murphy, he's the Glengarriff man who's who's training and coaching the Bantry footballers. I had a chat with him for this week's paper, and they're confident. Kind of they're after taking a load of confidence off beating Bandon and getting through to this stage. So, and again, like Newcestown, they really have nothing to lose. So you never know. Kind of they're with a chance, Jack. I think hopefully.
I suppose another topic you'll hopefully be touching on in this week's paper is newly, I don't know what word I was going to use there, but Premier League goal scorer.
Yes.
Bandon's Conor Hourihane, who got his Aston Villa Premier League scoring.
Yeah, good stuff for him, because he kind of even tweeted after that he's now scored in all 4 of the English top flight divisions. So that's League 2, League 1, Championship and Premier League, which is that's a nice little feat to have in the sporting CV, I think. He's 25 goals for Villa now in probably just 2.5 seasons, which is some going again. And it's very important for Conor, because he started the first game of the season against Spurs. Villa lost that game away in London, and he lost his place in the starting team in the Villa Premier League. He was playing in the Cups, the Carabao Cup, and he got 3 goals. I think he got 2 against Crewe and 1 against Brighton, it could be. And he won his place back in the team for the Premier League. And since he's come back in, they picked 4 points up out of a possible 6. He was very influential in the 5-1 win against Norwich City last weekend. He got a goal himself. He set up a goal for Wesley in the first half. He was taken down for a penalty that Wesley missed. So it was a performance that he needed, because, like I said, he was out of the team, so he was fighting to get back in there. So just great to see him score his first Premier League goal. Again, classy finish, that magic left foot. And hopefully he might set up a few or score a few with the next couple of Ireland games coming up, Jack, because squeaky bum time for Ireland and Euro 2020 qualifiers, Georgia and Switzerland both away from home.
Yeah, Georgia away, never an easy place to go, as the old cliche goes, and we could really
old cliche, yeah.
that old chestnut. So we could really do with a few Conor Hourihane free kicks, or at least decent corners that someone can get their nut on. Maybe John Egan, hopefully, touch wood. Again, plenty more in this week's Southern Star. Like, we've plenty of previews, obviously, with Newcestown, Duhallow. We have coverage of the games from last weekend. Adrigold footballers have given themselves a great chance of staying up in the Intermediate Football Championship. We also have previews of the Dawneys ladies and the Castlehaven ladies are in county junior football finals this weekend. So we've talked to both camps. We've also an explainer in there about the Cork 2020 county championships. Just kind of letting people know who's in what division. I hope it's more concise than your description of the All Ireland series for next year.
It is. It's a lot more concise. I hope. I might have to have another look at it now after my performance today. But it just gives people, I suppose, lets them know who's in what division, because it's very much kind of set in stone now. There's still a couple of places that can move. So let's say in the new Senior A Football Championship, which is the level...
Hold on, just let me get a notebook and calculator out here.
The new Senior A Football Championship, which is the level below the Premier Senior, you have the likes of O'Donovan, Rossa, Dawneys, Bantry Blues, Éire Óg. So it's kind of interesting for people to know what possible local derbies we might have in West Cork next year. But I'd urge you to read that this week rather than listen to me.
Yeah.
Because I confuse a nation. But there's plenty more besides
that. Read it
that.
Twice, I would suggest, just to be sure.
Just to be sure, yeah. Plenty more on it. Again, action-packed as usual. So.
And before you sign off there today, I just wanted to touch on one more topic before we wrap up this week's show. And I think you know where I'm going with this. It is the fortunes of the famed Manchester United Football Club, a club very close and dear to your heart, and they're in a relegation battle. I think it's safe to say they're 2 points above the drop zone. They're surrounded by teams like Norwich, Watford, the team that beat them on Sunday, Newcastle United. So Kieran, Ollie's at the wheel. Should he stay or should he go?
As a Liverpool fan, I presume you're taking no joy whatsoever from the current woes, the trials and tribulations of United. It's quite bad again at the moment. It's hard to see when you're actually looking at the squad, and I saw the squad that flew out to the game against Newcastle when he was named on Saturday. You're thinking, Jesus, this is a mid-table squad at best. You know, kind of the couple of injuries that they've had has decimated the squad. It was light at the start of the season. It's worse now. I think the hope is that they'll get the injured players back, and then they might go on a bit of a run.
Was the sale of Romelu Lukaku not the stupidest thing they done all summer? Looking back, I know hindsight 2020, I get that, but this is a man who's like, he's probably guaranteed to score at least 15 goals, and that's not if he's playing every week. If he's playing every week, he might get 20 or whatever. And I know he wasn't really setting the world alight, but they've gone from having an established Premier League striker to no established Premier League striker.
Yeah, kind of, it happened late in the transfer window, would you presume? But it was mooted a long way off that Lukaku wanted to go. So, like, there should have been some contingency plan there, because like, he was making all the noises he wanted to go. Like, there was Inter, Juventus, and he obviously ended up with Inter and stuff. So they should have had a plan B. There was like Mandzukic from Juventus was heavily linked, and there's talks about going back in for him again, but he's 33, 34, you know, kind of.
It's really last resort stuff, isn't it?
It is. Like, United are left so lightweight up front. You've Rashford, who the stats have shown has a worse goal scoring record than who's that beauty from Arsenal?
Danny Welbeck?
No, the Danish.
Bentner.
Yeah, that they always actually have a very similar goal scoring record for the amount of games that Bentner played at the same time in his career. So you're left with Rashford, Anthony Martial, who hasn't convinced yet, and a 17-year-old or now 18-year-old in Mason Greenwood. Like, that's so light. And then,
just using your Bentner comparison as well for a second, just to use a Chelsea comparison, young Chelsea upstart Tammy Abraham is now only 3 goals shy of Rashford's best ever season, and we're only 8 games into the campaign. And as much as I like Rashford as a player, and would have been someone who said that guy's a player, you know, I thought he's starting to look like, I mentioned Danny Welbeck, he's starting to look like potentially the new Daniel Welbeck.
He's not a centre forward. I think you have to play him out on the left. You know, I really think he has to be shifted out to the left. He's been given a chance to lead the line, and he just hasn't taken it. You know, he doesn't look fully fit either the last couple of games, especially against Arsenal. He didn't look fully fit at all, and because of injuries, he's featured in nearly every game. I'm not making excuses for him, because
sounds like, yeah, but that's
it's a small, but you know, kind of, it's a tough place to be United fans at the moment. You know, kind of. It probably feels what it's been like. This is what it feels like to be a Liverpool fan, I think, for so long. You know,
not for a long time now, but
yeah, but kind of the tables have turned so much, and then almost
Liverpool in the Gerrard Houllier era, Roy Evans era, maybe.
But they want this bad. Liverpool still want this, but I don't think, you know. And the fear is, after the international break, United's next game up is at home to Liverpool.
And then they have 5 away games on the bounce, including Champions League fixtures.
And United haven't won an away game in 10-11 games at this stage.
Since February.
It's appalling how badly it's falling down. It's falling down so fast. And I honestly think it hasn't got as bad as it can yet. I think it'll get worse. I really do. Kind of.
Well, if you really think it's going to get worse, Man United are currently 100-1 to be relegated, but Kieran reckons it's going to get worse. So if that happens, the odds will probably go down to something in the region of 80-1, 60-1. So maybe if you're a betting man or woman, like I tend to be occasionally, maybe now's the time to back United to get relegated. They
just don't score goals, Jack. Kind of, I could start in a rant. Like, kind of defensively, they have definitely improved. You know, Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, they are better defensively, but they cannot score goals. It's something like they've scored 17 goals in the last 18 games, and you could straight away 4 those against Chelsea in the opener. Like, they're struggling to create chances. They had no shot on target away to Alkmaar in the Europa League. Kind of, it's every game.
And Holly Gunner had the gall to say the pitch was unplayable. The surface was not up to United standards. This after not having a shot on target in 90 minutes of European football against a mid-table Dutch side.
I'm not going to defend Ole, right? And this is the last thing I'm going to say in it, but, right? but what I think for Solskjaer is he's come in at a time, like following Mourinho, like he did lift the spirits, and there was a lot of, you could say, the likes of Sanchez and Lukaku didn't want to be there, and even Fellaini and Chris Smalling. I know Phil Jones is still there. Like, there's a lot of deadwood that needs to be shifted out, and at least he has started that kind of clear out process. And he's bringing in these young fellas, the likes of Mason Greenwood, and a couple of more. Than Gardner started against Alkmaar last week. So he's given these young fellas a go, which is commendable. Like, it's not to say they'll all make it. Like, the odds are some of them won't, you know. But at least he's clearing out the deadwood and bringing in some new, fresh fellas out of the academy. But to throw the young fellas in at the deep end, a struggling team that's devoid of confidence, that can't score a goal, that can't win away from home, that has no leaders, it's tough on them, but I don't know how history will remember Solskjaer's reign when it eventually does end, but I think he has started a process that hopefully in years to come will lead to something. So let's see, we might check back in a couple of weeks' time and see if my tears dried.
Okay, Kieran, but on that note, I think it's time for you to get us out of here and you go back to your office and dry
those tears.
Dry those tears.
Anyway, thanks for listening to this week's Star Sport podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. So if you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher or wherever else you listen to the show.